I hope you're having pizza and ice cream today as well, and if not, go get some because you bloody deserve it. Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Sarah and I love to talk about books, and today I am going to be giving you my April TBR. I don't know why, but for some reason I'm so excited that we are getting into April. I guess maybe because restrictions are lifting, and here in Scotland, like April, May and June are the best weather months of our year. So I do really like this time of year. But also February and March have been pretty tough, and I am ready for some positivity, not only in my reading but in life in general. So I'm excited to get into the spring. But guys, I have had a long day at work fighting with technology that did not want to do what it is meant to do, and I have still got to do the shopping, and so I'm gonna try and whiz through these as fast as possible. Plus, I think I'm getting the start of heartburn, which is so cruel because I'm filming this on Wednesday, and Wednesday night for my oldest son and me has become pizza and ice cream night. It started off way back when I separated from my husband, and Wednesday is the day that my youngest two go and stay with him for a few days. And to try and cheer me up a bit on a Wednesday night, we started pizza and ice cream night, where we sit, we eat the obvious, and we watch some really good TV. So I'm really looking forward to that this week. So I really hope I don't have heartburn, because heartburn and big cheesy slabs do not mix. So behave. Anyway, I'm sure you don't want to know about my digestive tract, so let's get on with the books. The first of which is Our Doris by Charles Heathcote, or Charlie as he's known to his booktube fans. This is written by a fellow booktuber. It's his first of, I want to say 3 Our Doris books, and the first one of his that I have read. I'm excited to get to this. I've heard good things and I really enjoy Charlie's channel. And I gather that this is a monologue told from the perspective of Harold, or Harold, who is the long-suffering husband of pillar of the community, Doris. And this is about the time where she tries to assert her prowess as a champion gardener in the community for the Women's Institute gardening competition, which is not probably not my usual sort of read, but I know from Charlie's channel that he has this super dry, sarcastic, curmudgeonly wit that I really enjoy listening to when he's doing his videos, and I know that that is going to come out in this book. So I know I'm going to enjoy myself with this one. My next one is a NetGalley that comes out on the 29th of April, and it's Before My Actual Heart Breaks by Tish, Delaney. And this is the story of Mary, who had big dreams, but now in her 40s is realising just how far from those dreams her life actually landed. It's set in Ireland, and the premise seems to hint that it is set in the time of the Troubles, possibly that Mary is connected to those in some way, and this is not a subject that I know a lot about, that I've read a lot about, which is really quite shocking, and I know I really need to do better on that. It's a big part of our history, and it's not something that I could speak at any great knowledge about. And particularly I remember as a child when we lived in the south of England and we used to go into London for day trips, bomb threats were a thing. You, even as a young kid, you were aware of bomb threats. But also, as I live in Scotland, I, despite my accent, identify as being Scottish, and we've had our own bids for independence from English rule and things. Like, I really want to learn more about that period of Irish and British history, and the way I learn things is really through fiction, so I'm looking forward to this one. And speaking of fights for independence, my next book is The Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver, and this is set during the Congo's bid for independence from Belgian rule. I think it's in the 1950s, so it's around the time of the assassination of their first elected prime minister, and a CIA coup to, I think, install a Western approved new Prime Minister. And it's about an evangelist missionary's part in that Western influence. It's told through the eyes of his wife and his 4 daughters, I think, who all in their own way have been shaped and scarred by their experiences, both of his missionary work and of their time in Africa. So this feeds into my interest in post-colonialism. It is written by a white author, but it's told from a white perspective, so I think that's okay, and I will just keep that in mind while I'm reading it. But it is highly regarded. It's a bit of a beast, but I have heard good things about this book, so I'm looking forward to that. And then I go to my Kindle for my next pick, and it is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I've been meaning to read a Shirley Jackson for ages, and actually I had kind of wanted to start with We Have Always Lived in the Castle, but I think this one came up on like a Kindle 99 pence deal, so I just bought it. I know that there is the Netflix series of the same name. I've only watched the first episode of that. It wasn't like a DNF or anything. I started watching other things around the same time and I haven't gone back to it. But I do understand that the TV version and the book are actually quite different. Because whereas from what I can remember, the Netflix version is a family that seem to have moved into a house. The actual book is about 4 people, yes, that do visit a haunted house, yes, but it's not a family. They're all there for their own different reasons. And basically the house messes with them. So horror's not a genre that I read very often, but it's not one that I'm against in the same way that I'm not that interested in fantasy. I am interested in horror, it just never seems to make its way onto my TBR. So I'm looking forward to dipping my toe into something a bit different with this one. And then my next book was supposed to be The Roundhouse by Louise, but I was going to get it from my library, and our libraries are still all closed here in Scotland. I'm a member of 3 different libraries, and 2 of them have a copy of this book, but neither of those copies are electronic, so I cannot get hold of it at the moment. So I've bumped it till later in the year because I am still interested in reading that. But instead I have moved forward one of my Project Everlasting Love picks instead. So this is where I reread books that I have rated 5 stars in the past. In most cases I read them quite a long time ago. I'm not a particularly big rereader, so I thought it would be fun this year to challenge myself to reread some of these books and see if that 5-star rating still held up. I've read 2 from that list so far this year. I read Owen Ivy's The Snow Child, and I read A History of Love by Nicole Krauss, and they both stood the test of time for me. They were both 5-star rereads. So this time I am going to one that I read even further back than those 2, and it is, oh, nearly dropped it there, The Cutting Room by Louise Welsh. And I think this might have been one of the books that really got me back into reading as an adult. Not that I ever totally fell out of it, but I think this was a book that it just felt like a real departure from anything I'd read before, and it really stayed in my mind. I went to see Louise Welsh at readings in the I Write Festival after I'd read this book. I've read some others of her books, but none of them have ever really come close to this one. So I want to see if this too has stood the test of time. And this book is so dark, so fucking dark. It's set in Glasgow, and actually parts of the book take place in Kelvin Grove Park, where I used to go on my lunch breaks from my first ever job when I was 17. I used to sit on a wee bench in Kelvin Grove Park and eat my sandwiches. And yeah, although the park is in this book, they are not eating sandwiches when they visit Kelvin Grove Park in this book. So anyway, this is about an auctioneer who, I think he's got maybe a problem with alcohol. Is he a bit of a loner? I don't know if I'm just making this up, because my memory, I mean, this really was, I think I read this back in 2003 maybe. In fact, when was it published? Yeah, that sounds about right. It was published in 2002. And he is doing a house clearing after someone has died. And while he's... oh, God, nearly fell out of its dust jacket. While he is removing the belongings from this house, he comes across some quite violent, explicit snuff photos, I think they would be called, which are kind of porn that features someone being killed. And he becomes quite compelled to find out more about the deceased owner of the house and about these photos. So I am excited to read this book again, but I am wondering how well it will have aged, just because of how old it is now. Although literally 2002 was yesterday. I'm not old. But it's written by a woman. It's about a gay man. There are visits to, I think, like strip clubs and stuff like that. So we'll see how well this is aged and if that affects how I feel about the book now. And then I've got another NetGalley. This time it is Jhumpa Lahiri's Whereabouts, which comes out on the 4th of May. And this is my third Jhumpa Lahiri book. It's my second that I've read this year. But when I saw it, I had to pick it up because I do really like her. I read The Namesake back in January, which I really enjoyed. I didn't enjoy it as much as the first book of hers that I read last year, I think it was. I read The Interpreter of Maladies, which is her, like, I think it won the Pulitzer. It's a collection of short stories. It is fantastic. Even if you think you don't like short stories, pick that up. But this is more like The Namesake in that it is a novel. And it follows a year in a woman's life. So I'm gathering now from the books that I've read of Lahiri's that she is very much more a character writer. There's so much like a plotty writer. So I'm just going to read the premise of this book because I don't really know how to explain it. So I've kind of got my laptop over here, so I have to set a funny angle to do this. But it says, exuberance and dread, attachment and estrangement. In this novel, Jhumpa Lahiri stretches her themes to the limit. The woman at the centre wavers between stasis and movement, between the need to belong and the refusal to form lasting ties. The city she calls home, an engaging backdrop to her days, acts as a confidant. The sidewalks around her house, parks, bridges, piazzas, streets, stores, and coffee bars. We follow her to the pool she frequents and to the train station that sometimes leads her to her mother, mired in a desperate solitude after her father's untimely death. In addition to colleagues at work where she never feels quite at ease, she has girlfriends, guy friends, and a him, a shadow who both consoles and unsettles her. But in the arc of a year, as one season gives way to the next, transformation awaits. One day at the sea, both overwhelmed and replenished by the sun's vital heat, her perspective will change. So you see why I struggle to say what's going on here, because it doesn't really tell you very much, but I am confident in this writer, and actually parts of that are already like making my spidey senses tingle that I'm going to enjoy this one. So I hope I'm not wrong. And then I'll just shift my laptop away. Now I've lost the bloody book. Here we go. Then I have Mohsin Hamid's The Reluctant Fundamentalist. And I gather this is all set during one conversation in a cafe in Lahore between a Pakistani man and an American stranger. So that sounds really interesting. And it's about the effect of 9/11 on an Indian immigrant who is a Princeton grad. He's building a really successful life for himself, but the fallout from 9/11 causes a seismic shift in his identity and uncovers some ties that are more fundamental than the money, power, or even love that he has been happily enjoying. I think this is quite a polarizing book, but it's come from the stash of my best bookish friend. He was chucking out a load of books a couple of years ago, and so a lot of the books on my shelves were from him. This is one of them, and it was shortlisted for the Booker, so for what that's worth. But I am quite interested in that one. And then I'm going to go on to dusty. Skint Estate by Carraway. This is a memoir about motherhood, and it says notes from the poverty line. And Carraway was or is a single mother living in temporary accommodation, and she's found herself stuck in the poverty trap. I've seen this mentioned by a couple of other British booktubers, and they said it was really interesting. And I think it's really important to look at these social issues. And for me, like I said earlier, it's fiction and memoir are really the forms that I learn from most. I really like the human aspect of any conflicts or traumas or social issues. So this looks like it's going to be quite interesting. And then I just have a couple of other books for book clubs. So the Shelterbox book club pick for April has not arrived yet. I think it's only actually just been voted on, but it's going to be Snow in May by Kseniya Melnik. And I gather that this is a collection of short stories about characters that all live in the same town, quite an isolated town in the far east of Russia, where it basically just snows all the time. It was the gateway to the Stalinist labor camps, and these stories are spread out over the second half of the 20th century and weave together history and like folklore or fables, which it's funny, that's kind of what I was looking for when I read, what was that book called? The Bear and the Nightingale. And so this couldn't have come at a better time. I'm really looking forward to that one. And then Scott and Nell for the Read Under the Bed book club. Their pick for April is Terra Nullius by Claire G. Coleman, who I gather is an Aboriginal writer, which I am so excited about. I've never read a book by an Aboriginal writer before. And this is another one I'm going to struggle to explain. So I gather it's about Australia, but it's not about our Australia or our history of Australia. And from that could either go two ways. It either means that this is the history of Australia as told by the Aboriginal people and, you know, the oppressed people that were under colonization, or it could go completely the other way and be a bit kind of sci-fi, dystopia, I don't know. And the description of the book doesn't really give it away. So back to the laptop. It says, the natives of the colony are restless. The settlers are eager to have a nation of peace and to bring the savages into line. Families are torn apart. Re-education is enforced. This rich land will provide for all. So I don't know which direction it's going to go, but either way, I'm totally here for it. That sounds really interesting. I haven't really read a lot of Australian fiction, particularly not based around the history and the being of Australia. I read Rabbit Proof Fence like a bloody years ago. I think I was still a teenager when I read that. And that was the first time that my eyes were really opened to not just the Aboriginal stories, but you know, the concept of Indigenous people and colonialism and all that damage and all that pain and trauma that has come with it. And I'm really looking forward to this. I know Scott and Nell put great books for their book club, and so yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one as well. It's also Dewey's 24-hour readathon in April. It's on the 24th, I think, but that could be wrong, so I will put it on the screen. I'll put it in the description below. You definitely should get involved. I will link to their website so you can sign up. And if you follow me for a while, you'll know that I am a big fan of Dewey's. It's a 24-hour readathon. You do not need to read for 24 hours, but when I don't have the kids, I do like to challenge myself to read as long as possible in those 24 hours. I think my record is 18 hours maybe, but as luck would have it, or chance or fate, not that I'm wishing my children away, but I am kid free that weekend, so I am super excited about that. I'll probably need that extra time because although I'm sharing with you my TBR for April, I'm way behind on my TBR for March, so I will probably most definitely 100% yes have a backlog to use Dewey's to catch up on, but more about that at the time. So hopefully that was a quick flick through what I'm going to be reading in April, because I can hear the rain outside. I've got to go to the supermarket to get my pizza and ice cream, so I better steel myself because it sounds like it's a howling gale out there after me talking about how wonderful spring is in Scotland. It's still March. I didn't lie. But I think I might need my wellies. So wish me luck. I hope you're having pizza and ice cream today as well. And if not, Go get some because you bloody deserve it. And until next time, bye. Settlers are eager to face. The settlers are eager. Oh God.